What were Dooku's very harsh criticisms of Yoda as the Jedi Grandmaster? The rivalry between Dooku and Yoda post Dooku's fall is legendary. It is the classic good master versus fallen apprentice story, but with much more complexity, especially when considering many of the points that Dooku raises against Yoda. He's right. From many observations, Dooku's turn to the dark side was justified based on the reasons that he gave, and while that in no way acquits him of any and all of the crimes that he would commit, it does help to display a glaring flaw in the Jedi Order that is embodied by Yoda. The Grandmaster of the Jedi Order is seen as the wise old leader, always ready to train and aid young Jedi in need. For the most part, he is that person. Yoda is good. However, Dooku's very existence exposes Yoda's weaknesses, and even a little bit of Yoda's darker aspect. The Count of Sereno turned Darth Tyrannus has quite a bit to say when concerning his former master, and hardly any of it is flattering. Today, we are going to take an in-depth look at Dooku's many scathing quotes about Yoda, because it's here that he actually goes into detail about what exactly he feels for Yoda, and why he feels Yoda is terrible for the galaxy, as Dooku puts it in the most understandable way possible. So today, my friends, let's take a look. This is a quote by Darth Tyrannus to Darth Sidious during one of their many conversations, and it goes like this. The Jedi Order's problem is Yoda. No being can wield that kind of power for centuries without becoming complacent at best, or corrupt at worst. He has no idea that it's overtaken him. He no longer sees all the little cumulative evils that the Republic tolerates and fosters, from slavery to endless wars, and yet he never asks, why are we not acting to stop this? Live alongside corruption for too long, and you no longer notice the stench. The Jedi cannot help the slaves of Tatooine, but they can help the slave masters. There is a lot to unpack here from Dooku, but the very first thing that Dooku criticizes Yoda of is his age. When we think about Yoda's age, a lot of it is said to his advantage. He's wise, and he's seen almost everything. So much wisdom and power can be gained in that time, and spent building something great, which Yoda has done. Yoda decided to allocate all of the time of his near immortal life devoted to the Jedi. Surely that would mean that his wisdom would be invaluable to the state of the Jedi Order today. But Dooku, interestingly, refutes this and says that this is actually a curse and not something that works in Yoda's favor. He criticizes Yoda for not adapting to the times and allowing the Order to do the same. Someone with a long lifespan like Yoda should learn to stay up to date with an ever-altering galaxy. But according to Dooku, Yoda did not do this. Instead, he was stuck in the old ways of the Jedi Order. In the Revenge of the Sith novelization, Yoda would even admit that this was one of his fatal flaws, saying to the spirit of Qui-Gon Jinn that he did not alter the Jedi Order with the state of the galaxy, and therefore was caught off guard by the evolved Sith. He had failed because he had trained the future generation to be like the Jedi that had trained him. Yoda admitted that this was a mistake and that the Order's fall was his fault. Shocking that at the end of it all, Dooku and Yoda agreed despite standing on opposite sides of the spectrum. Yoda should not shoulder all of the burden, but it is true that he was at fault. And shockingly, Dooku was the first one to point this out. Yoda had tethered the Jedi to a republic that was full of greed and politicians, outright evil senators like Orn Free Taa, who sold out his entire homeworld of Ryloth and his people into slavery so that he could live a luxurious and comfortable life. There is of course no need to mention those senators playing both sides of the war and profiting off of it, those on the Hutt's payroll. The kinds of laws and statutes being passed in the Senate were not for the good of the galaxy, it was for the good of the pockets of those in charge. The galaxy suffered, and the only quality of life changes were those in the upper class and the core worlds, leaving the mid and outer rims to fight for their literal scraps. What made this worse is that Yoda not only still believed the Republic was the best chance for democracy and peace, but he backed this up by effectively allowing the Jedi to become lapdogs of the Senate. The Jedi called themselves a shield, but yet acted as a sword for the Senate, getting involved in matters that they had no business in, and Jedi blood being spilled on behalf of senators. Rather than the Republic emissaries being sent to peacefully settle difficult political matters, it was the Jedi who were their ambassadors, and such as what we saw in the opening of the Phantom Menace, which should have never happened. The Trade Federation blocked Naboo. This was aggressive and a slight declaration of war. The Republic should have responded with senators or ambassadors. While we on the outside know that this entire thing was a ruse by Sidious, there was nothing yet to tip off anyone that this move has sinister motives at all. The Trade Federation was being greedy and suspicious, but there wasn't yet any call for Jedi intervention. No actual moves of invasion had been made, and the Viceroy was open to negotiation. In the opening scroll of the Phantom Menace, we learned that it's Palpatine who secretly dispatched Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon to see this matter out. And of course, as Sidious, he orders their termination in order to begin the conflict. But the Supreme Chancellor should have never had this power in the first place. He should have had no ability to dispatch the Jedi of his own accord. Had the Federation acted violently against the ambassadors, then a call for Jedi intervention would have been warranted. But this is a prime example of the Jedi being the lapdogs of the Senate and Sidious taking advantage. To make things worse, the Jedi didn't have any representative in the Senate at all, and were forced to obey their every whim. It was because of this that worlds like Dooku's home planet of Sereno were left to fend for themselves. There was a time when Sereno was threatened by a dangerous band of pirates that were harassing the world and its people. Dooku's very sister transmitted a message directly to the Jedi Order asking Dooku for help, and the Order turned his family away. Why? Because Sereno refused to join the Republic and wanted to remain independent. Because they were not a part of the government, the Guardians of Peace and Justice denied them any help at all. Disgusted by this, Dooku went rogue and flew to liberate Sereno himself, which he did in a matter of a single week. And it was on Sereno that Dooku would begin to make the choices that he did, and would ultimately lead him down to the path of the Sith, with the final straw being when Dooku announced to Yoda that if one more Jedi lost their life on account of the Republic, that he would leave the Jedi Order, and the very next Jedi who died would be his Padawan and friend in Qui-Gon Jinn. Dooku was enraged with Yoda, calling him complacent, accusing the Grandmaster of being foolish and old. Dooku believed that he himself would be a far better Grandmaster, and in the novelization for Revenge of the Sith, we have a flashback between Dooku and Sidious on the Invisible Hand. During this conversation, we learned that Sidious promised Dooku once that the Empire had achieved full glory, that Dooku was supposed to lead what was essentially going to be a new Dark Jedi Order, acting as the Empire's enforcers, and a new Jedi Order would be born of the doctrine of the Sith. While this seems hypocritical, we'll have to remember that by this time, Dooku was fully twisted by the dark side. In Dooku's mind, it was fine that his Jedi would be working for the government because his own master was the leader. Dooku trusted Sidious's judgment above all else, and he knew that if Dooku started a brand new Jedi Order led by the teachings of the Sith and the dark side, that Sidious would support them far better than Grandmaster Yoda or the Republic ever did. This was Dooku's dream, and this was Sidious's lie. In Dooku's mind, this new, reborn Jedi Order would surpass Yoda's order in both power and effectiveness, a force for real change. In the end, Dooku began his path caring more about the stability of the galaxy than anything else. But what's most interesting of this all is the first thing that we had noticed is that although Dooku calls Yoda's integrity into question, he gives his former master the benefit of the doubt and says that Yoda doesn't seem to even realize what he's become. There was always a part of Dooku that wished that Yoda would see the error of his ways. A part of Dooku that still always loved and respected Yoda, and proves that although you could take Dooku out of the Jedi, you could not take the Jedi out of Dooku. And perhaps had Yoda listened to the concerns of his old apprentice much sooner, I do believe that Dooku would have never turned, and perhaps Sidious would have been unearthed, the Jedi Order reborn anew, powerful and righteous. But anyway, my friends, do you agree with Dooku? Do you believe that Yoda was a terrible Grandmaster and a fool? Or is Dooku clouded by the dark side and misled? Thank you again, my friends, for visiting the channel today. May the Force be with you, and have a great one.